What's going on, everybody? It's your boy JRich back for another video. It has been a long time since I've done a solo one, but it is a very special occasion. Maybe not a special occasion, but it's something important that is going on, and it is the NFL draft. And our boy, your boy, my boy, Ray's boy, Mel Kiper Jr. dropped his latest mock draft. And after NFL free agency, there is a lot of things that are changing in how the draft may unfold. So let's dive into it, because Mel cooked up a spicy one, and especially for fantasy football purposes. Now, there is no trades in this mock. I was very intrigued to see what the Vikings do, but with no trades, it's a little chalky. I'm not a big fan of that part of it, but it is a great mock, and it is a great thing to look at because it tells us more and more about what these teams are potentially doing. And with free agency kind of being wrapped up for the most part, we can take a look once again as to where these teams are standing. And I think, depending on if you've been paying attention, there may be a few surprises. So let's get into it right now. As you know, your boy's a little bit sick right now, but let's dive into the mock because Mel dropped us some heat-tuds. We will keep it short and sweet to start because it is a little bit chalky. But we do have Caleb Williams at 1 to the Chicago Bears. We've seen what they've done to revamp this offense, bring in Keenan Allen, bring in Gerald Everett as another tight end to complement Cole Kmet. We talked about this a lot on Wake Up. So if you didn't catch it yesterday, we talked about it quite a bit with the Keenan Allen trade, but Caleb Williams still slated to go to Chicago, so no real surprises there. Depending on how tapped in you are right now, there has been a bit of a switch when you look at 2 and 3. Jayden Daniels is currently the projected quarterback to go to the Commanders at 2. Now, there's still the chance the Commanders try and trade up for Caleb Williams to secure their hometown kid, but right now, it does seem like Jayden Daniels is going to be heading to Washington as things stand currently. Now, that can always change. Drake Maye definitely still in the running for sure for that number 2 slot. But as it stands right now, it does seem like Jayden is the favorite. And then getting down to 3, we do have the New England Patriots drafting North Carolina quarterback Drake Maye. I love Drake Maye. I think it'd be unfortunate for his start to his career because of the weapons they have in New England. But I'd be very excited if the Patriots got Drake Maye because I am hoping for it. I do think he'd be a great fit in New England. I do think he kind of does what they need. That's kind of like that Mac Jones upgrade. He's mobile in the pocket. He can throw the ball everywhere. Like, a lot of reasons to like Maye. I think from a fantasy standpoint, it's difficult to know where you want to take him. You got to probably take him in the top 5. But if you want to take a receiver over him, I can't really blame you for that. Because next, we have Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Arizona Cardinals. Again, no surprise, pretty chalk so far. We expect Marv to go there. There's been a lot of reports the top 3 teams are not looking to trade down. Now, we know the Minnesota Vikings could be a team that's looking to trade up, but in this mock, there are no trades. So Marv going to the Arizona Cardinals at 4, replacing Hollywood Brown, who now signed to the Kansas City Chiefs. And this seems like a foregone conclusion to this point, with Marquise Brown headed to Kansas City and the Arizona Cardinals needing a new wide receiver 1. Marv can obviously fill that void. And at 5, we do have kind of the most likely trade down spot, or one of the most talked about trade down spots, with the Los Angeles Chargers. But this mock has no trades. And we know Justin Herbert needs wide receivers in a bad way. So Malik Nabers headed to the Los Angeles Chargers. It's a great spot, right? Plenty of targets to go around. In theory, we'll see how much they throw the ball. The overall volume for Herbert could be a bit of an issue, but I think to support one potential wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 2 in fantasy football, yes, Herbert can obviously do that. Malik Nabers can be a guy who comes in, gets 130, 140 potential targets. Doesn't mean he's going to do it, but he's definitely a guy who can earn those targets. And if you have that top 5 selection, I mean, you should be more than fine. There will still be QJ involved, Josh Palmer, but Malik Nabers is going to come in and pretty quickly establish himself as the guy. So I think you'd want to confidently draft him in redraft and in Dynasty, obviously, as a top option. I think it's interesting, how you look at him compared to Odunze, who goes at 6 to the New York Giants. Which situation do you prefer? Yes, we know that Harbaugh's the better coach, Herbert's the better quarterback, but maybe potentially the volume could slightly lean towards an Odunze if he was the 6th overall pick. Now, in terms of scoring opportunities, that's kind of up in the air. I think Harbaugh's going to do a good job, but I don't see the Chargers lighting up the scoreboard by any stretch. They're probably going to run the ball, control it, play a lot of good defense, at which they're playing in low-scoring games. Kind of similar to what we've seen from Denver over the past few seasons, where they have a good defense, but the offense kind of just does its thing, but it's never putting up these elite numbers, supporting high-end wide receivers like we kind of wanted out of Denver. So for me, I think it may be an interesting conversation for some. Some people like Odunze over Nabers. Some people prefer Nabers. But do these situations sway you at all, or do you just take the quarterback? Let me know in the comments. I'm still kind of Nabers over Odunze pretty firmly. Some people aren't quite there, but I think for me, I prefer Nabers. I think especially with Herbert in that new offense, I still think a wide receiver 1 will be great for fantasy football. When you talk about the second and third option, that's where things become a little bit more difficult. But if Nabers is going to be the 1 for the Chargers, I'm all in on that. I think the Giants, because of their quarterback play, is going to be a bit of an issue, and we'll have to see how they sort that out over the next few years, whether it's Daniel Jones or another quarterback that they draft. But it definitely looks like they are looking towards a rebuild, because Daniel Jones, he ain't looking like it. And it seems like from a lot of reports and rumors within the organization that they're just about done with Daniel Jones right now. Now here's where we get a bit of a break from the fantasy landing spots. Joe Alt to the Tennessee Titans. We know they desperately need offensive line help. Dallas Turner to fortify that defensive line for the Atlanta Falcons. Jared Verse to help out, again, that Bears defensive line. Another great selection there. But this one, oh man. Now, I saw Jordan Reed put a tweet out about this, and I was like, I do not know how to feel about it. The Jets do need another playmaker. But Brock Bowers at 10 is definitely a bit of a surprise. And now this comes on the back of Tyron Smith being signed at left tackle. Very recently in mocks, we did have offensive tackles being drafted by the Jets in a lot of mocks. But with Tyron Smith being signed by the Jets, now it opens up the possibility for Brock Bowers to be a top 10 pick and drafted by the Jets to add another weapon to this offense for Aaron Rodgers. And while we all like Bowers, I think he would instantly step in as the number 3 target, number 2 pass catcher when we're not talking about Breece Hall factoring into the equation. Garrett Wilson, obviously the 1. Breece Hall probably going to be the 2 in terms of targets. The 3, in my opinion, would be Brock Bowers. He'd be, at this point, potentially a top 7, top 8 selection in rookie drafts. I know we don't always like to target these type of situations, but I think with Rodgers, you're looking at a situation that is actually pretty good for fantasy football. There could be some touchdown upside. We know that the volume will probably be there. The Jets are one of the better landing spots, whether it's wide receiver or tight end, because we know they need a pass catcher. So they're going to lean on the running game. They're going to pass the ball to Breece Hall, but there's still plenty more targets to go around. And Bowers kind of filling that intermediate role and being a yak guy for Aaron Rodgers is a great fit, not just for Bowers, but for fantasy football as well. So I think this could be one of the spots that, while people haven't been talking about it much, could be great for fantasy football and a spot that we should be looking at as a benefit for Bowers. He could go to other teams and there could be decent situations. I think this is one of the better ones, and I think this could vault Bowers up a little bit in rookie drafts. He is already pretty high for some people, but for some people who are maybe fading the situation, don't think he can be an elite difference maker, this may change their minds just a little bit. Not because the Jets are great offensively, but because there is going to be plenty of opportunity for Bowers if he steps into this offense and is the number 2 pass catching option outside of, again, Breece Hall for the New York Jets. Now, I kind of spoiled it off the top, but JJ McCarthy is heading to the Minnesota Vikings. They've obviously been heavily linked. He is the favorite to go play for the Minnesota Vikings right now. There's talks of trade-ups. I think the question for me is, does this make Justin Jefferson happy? Is this the player that keeps him in Minnesota? Because they definitely need to find their QB of the future, or potential QB of the future. But I think it still hinges on whether or not Justin Jefferson's going to be happy with a signing like this. Now, I don't believe they're getting JJ McCarthy at 11. I think Denver would be more than willing to hop them in that situation and not take the guy they take with the next pick. But JJ would be in a great situation, assuming that Justin Jefferson stays. McCarthy could be, that play action guy who can play under center. He can do a lot of things that you need to be successful in the NFL. And that's one of the reasons why I do like JJ to some extent. He has that pro style experience, and I think that will serve him well early in minicamp and through doing some of the things that he needs to do to be successful in the NFL. He will have some of those tools already and have experience running those types of systems. So I think that will be a benefit for JJ and for Kevin O'Connell, who will be obviously his offensive coordinator and head coach. So I think when you look at it from a fantasy standpoint, he'd have the weapons. They're a pretty good team. They're probably going to throw the ball a ton because they're terrible. But I think that JJ for fantasy would be great, and it's a good landing spot for JJ. It's just, Can he be the guy to elevate this team? Because they had Kirk Cousins, who we know isn't quite going to get you there, and JJ has to be better than that. But for everything that you think Kirk Cousins isn't in terms of winning the big game, he actually was pretty good and had some pretty good seasons for Minnesota. And especially if you're talking fantasy football, he was great for all the pass catchers on the Minnesota Vikings. But let's get into the next one, because this one got me shaking my head. Like, I know that the Denver Broncos need a quarterback, but if they take Bo Nix at 12, oh man, I don't know. I know there's a lot of steam about Bo being a first rounder. I expected more the 20s, but to Denver, I mean, this honestly doesn't sway me at all in the slightest. Like, okay, he's going to throw the ball to Courtland Sutton. Their team is still terrible. They still have no cap space. Like, I'm not the biggest Bo believer for this price. Like, you're telling me you get him in the second round? Okay, cool. Like, I can be on board with that. But a top 12 selection on Bo Nix, when, again, JJ McCarthy just went, I explained, for everything that he's not from a production standpoint, there's a lot of reasons to like JJ McCarthy. Bo Nix, again, I like Bo Nix, but I don't like him like this. Like, I don't like him at 12. They need a quarterback. 2025, not looking great for quarterbacks, but at this price, it just seems like they're praying that Bo Nix can be the guy while they're rebuilding, while they're fixing their cap. Like, this is bad. I don't know why they'd make this move. I'm not sure why Mel thinks this would be a great situation. Let's see what Mel had to say. Are they comfortable with sitting as quarterback? Are they running out of options so they can find a way to move up? Yeah, like, realistically, if this happened, they'd probably try and move up ahead of the Vikings and take JJ, because it just seems like a better pick. Nix isn't going to be for every team, but Peyton might see a little Drew Brees. Oh, God. Mel, what are we doing? He's not Drew Brees, man. Oh, yes, he's a pretty good processor, but again, beyond the 20s is really where he tends to struggle, and he doesn't throw the ball very far downfield. The ADOT was low. There are concerns. All right, let's move on. That's just not good. That, for fantasy football, that does not move the needle. Like, quarterback going to Denver, don't care. Like, it doesn't matter that it's a 12 overall. It really wouldn't sway me. I'm not drafting Bo Nix higher because he went to Denver. At that point, is he a mid-second, maybe a high second? Sure. But he's not a first rounder. There's no way. And you'll see why when we get through the rest of the mock draft, but there's no way Bo Nix is a first round rookie pick just because he goes 12 overall. J.C. Latham to the Las Vegas Raiders. Great for them. They need an offensive tackle. Olu Fusanu, Saints desperately need a tackle. Quinyon Mitchell, who, again, they're actually right now in the running for L'Jarius Sneed, so there's talks about that potentially happening. I don't think it's going to, but Quinyon Mitchell to the Colts, where they desperately need secondary help. Troy Fatanu to the Seattle Seahawks. We saw them trade for Sam Howell. Ray doesn't think he has a chance to start, but you never know. It's fortifying that offensive line. Terrion Arnold to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Talise Fuaga to the Bengals. So not a receiver, because they're still up in the air about T. Higgins. Is T. Higgins coming back? Is he not? What are they going to do? They could obviously go receiver here. They decide to go tackle here, and that's where Mel decides to take them. Byron Murphy, the second DT out of Texas, to the Rams. Play with Aaron Donald, maybe? Learn the ropes? That would be a pretty good situation. That Rams front would be unreal if they got Byron Murphy. And bam! We have our answers, finally. And this is one of the ones that, through free agency, I hadn't really thought about that much. Like, we kind of knew Pittsburgh needed a wide receiver, but Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU, at number 20 to the Pittsburgh Steelers to play with George Pickens and be the wide receiver 2 in an Arthur Smith offense, which, let me tell you, folks, not great. Not great. But Brian Thomas is a phenomenal receiver. Can he supplant George Pickens as the wide receiver 1? That is the big question. I think this would be an interesting spot for how people felt about him in rookie drafts, because when you look at the numbers for Arthur Smith offenses, it's not great. But I do see a world where they use the tight ends a little bit less in Pittsburgh and potentially use the wide receivers more. I also, of course, love the wide receiver development that Pittsburgh has shown us throughout the years. They continue to crank out wide receivers. And whenever Pittsburgh takes a wide receiver, you got to draft some of them, and you got to take notice. And at 20 overall, Brian Thomas going to Pittsburgh is a great spot. Arthur Smith will not be there forever, and you definitely want to invest in what is going to happen, because whether it's Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, or another quarterback down the line, Brian Thomas will probably have at some point a pretty damn good season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm definitely in on this situation. Big fan of Thomas and what he can do. I think it'd be interesting to see how does it work out with Pickens and who ends up being the alpha. I think Thomas could push him a little bit, not in year one, but I think by year two, even potentially year three, we could be looking at a situation where maybe Brian Thomas is the big dog. I know there's a lot of Pickens truthers out there not going to like that, but Thomas is a damn good wide receiver with a lot of talent, so I think he would definitely push him a little bit. Graham Barton to the Miami Dolphins to solidify the offensive line. Nate Wiggins to the Philadelphia Eagles, who desperately need secondary help. Cooper DeJean with the second pick that the Minnesota Vikings traded for with the Houston Texans. So DeJean, again, to fortify the defensive backfield for the Minnesota Vikings. That was one of the worst in the NFL last season. So I think that's big for them. Tyler Guyton coming into Dallas to replace Tyron Smith. Great pickup for the Dallas Cowboys. We saw Tyler Guyton at the Senior Bowl. Dude is a monster. He is a beast and will be a great pickup for the Cowboys. We have Latu to the Green Bay Packers to be their new outside linebacker. That would be a great pickup for them. They desperately need it. And then we have our next big pick. Boom! Xavier Worthy to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not sure how to feel about it. It's a fine slot. I think it would make Trey Palmer kind of irrelevant. Not that a lot of people are relying on Trey Palmer, but we did talk about him last year, how we did see some targets, how we did see some opportunities in this Bucs offense. Worthy would just be another guy on the team. He'd see some targets. He'd be okay for best ball. He is not a first-round pick in rookie drafts. I think that's all that needs to be said. He's crazy fast. He's talented, but he's on an offense with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. He's not getting the ball probably more than 60, 70 times next season. And I'd say that's probably generous. And at that point, they're deep targets or deep shots. He's kind of pegged into that Jameson Williams type of role where he's not doing a lot. He's not getting a ton of targets. He's kind of in that gadgety role where he can make some plays for the offense, but he's not going to be a staple for fantasy football. So while he's still a first-round pick, you still maybe want to take some shots. At the end of the day, he's not going to be a guy who's going to make much of a difference for fantasy football with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin's on the team. Now, if those guys move on to other teams and they change, personnel over multiple seasons because they're going to be there for a while, then maybe Worthy can get a shot. But again, this is a long-term projection for him to fantasy relevance on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Great spot for the offense, not a great spot for Xavier Worthy. We have the Buffalo Bills taking TJ Tampa, a cornerback out of Iowa State, not a wide receiver, which is a bit of a surprise. Chop Robinson to the Arizona Cardinals. Sorry for skipping that. And boom, a big one here. This one would be crazy. We love the Detroit Lions offense. We love Ben Johnson. We love Amon-Ra St. Brown. We love Jahmyr Gibbs. We like Dave Montgomery. We like Jared Goff. But if Xavier Lagette went to the Detroit Lions, man, would that mean the end of Jameson Williams? Or would that simply mean that he fills that wide receiver 2 role that has been pretty decent in the Detroit offense? It's not going to be this, high-end wide receiver 2 role more than likely, but it could be pretty good. We saw Josh Reynolds have some pretty good years on this Detroit Lions team, especially last year. He definitely had some fantasy relevant weeks. He definitely had some weeks where you could have been using him in fantasy. And so you look at what the Lions need, that outside presence that can really make plays outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown. It was kind of supposed to be Jameson Williams, but this really tells you that maybe Jameson Williams is going to be that wide receiver 3 who stretches the field, who is a gadget guy, who gets the deep shots, but is never going to be a consistent playmaker for fantasy football to where he's getting the touchdowns, he's making the third down catches, he's running a lot of routes. Xavier Lagette can be that. They already have Amon-Ra, so he can play outside. He can be the X. He can be that dominant outside wide receiver, and he is rising right now. He's been in a lot of second rounds. This is one of the first times I've seen someone put him, boom, smack in the first round. And while the Lions do have a lot of needs, if they finally went and attacked the wide receiver position once again to kind of admit that maybe J-Mo didn't quite work out the way they hoped, this would be a phenomenal fit with Amon-Ra to be inside. Lagette can play outside. They don't really work in each other's areas very well. for fantasy, I think this would bump him up a little bit, could even push him to be a first rounder. That could make him a bit of a letdown, but I think the value insulation of playing in Detroit, playing in a good offense, like all of that is very valuable, and getting Lagette in that system increases his touchdown upside, increases his potential scoring, because they're going to put up a lot of points. Their defense still needs a bit of work, and they put up a lot of points at home and even on the road. If they can improve on the road, could be very formidable as well. We know this Lions team is ascending. Xavier Lagette would be a phenomenal fit in the Lions offense, and I think even in rookie drafts is a pretty safe pick. Back of the first, early second, lock him in, would be a great fit for fantasy football. But we are not done yet. We have the Baltimore Ravens taking Amarius Mims, the OT out of Georgia, Roger Rosengarten, the OT out of Washington, to the San Francisco 49ers. And we can't end it off quite yet, because the Kansas City Chiefs, even after signing Hollywood Brown, Mel Kiper Jr. said, "Not so fast, my friend. We're not done yet."
I think we ain't done yet.
A.D. Mitchell, wide receiver out of Texas, to the Kansas City Chiefs to be the X, be the Y, be the I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what this would mean. I don't know what to make of it. How do you fit Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, A.D. Mitchell, Hollywood Brown in an offense? I think potentially you could see A.D. Mitchell get a little overdrafted, right? Because he Kansas City, first round pick. Boom, value to the moon. To the moon. Doesn't matter, to the moon. Doesn't matter, to the moon. And we know that we've seen rookies struggle to get on the field with Mahomes because the chemistry isn't quite there. Maybe they're not fully ready. Like, Mitchell's a little bit raw, but he's a good player, man. Like, he can play that MVS role, right? Like, he can play that MVS role, maybe even a little bit better than Hollywood Brown can. So it's interesting to see, like, how would they ultimately make this personnel work? Who would be the guy? Would Rashee Rice be the guy that kind of falls by the wayside? It feels unlikely because of the chemistry he now has with Patrick Mahomes. He has his trust. So we've seen that be a pretty big factor for Mahomes over the years, especially last season when everyone's dropping passes. Balls are getting intercepted off receivers' hands. So A.D. Mitchell to the Chiefs. Let me know what you think, because I don't know what to make of it, because the value would skyrocket because of the Chiefs' landing spot, and the talent is there. The situation is good because there will be targets available. It's really just, what is the right fit? Is it still, not quite mid-first, because we know who the mid-first guys are, but is he at the top of that next tier, that 8, that 9, that 10? I talked about how I like Lagette in that, 10, 11 range, back of the first. A.D. Mitchell, he's going to push there with that Kansas City landing spot. So it's very difficult to know, is it the right selection, and when can you take him in rookie drafts? I think it's interesting from how do they make all these players work. And Mel kind of says it's a 1-year deal with Marquise Brown, and it's probably not going to be an additional year because of their cap situation. So if they want to take A.D. Mitchell, develop him for a year, he can replace Hollywood after that. He can play in that Marquez Valdez-Scantling role. Where do you want to draft a guy that you got to wait a year on? But if you wait that year, he will be Patrick Mahomes' potential X-wide receiver. So a lot to sort out there, a lot to figure out, but an absolute banger to end the mock draft from Mel Kiper Jr. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you let me know in the comments what your favorite selection is and how you would feel about some of these players in rookie drafts. And make sure you use the promo code DDD at Underdog Fantasy if you are a new user and a first-time depositor to get a 100% deposit match up to $100. Support Destination Devy, and more importantly, get entered into the NFL Draft Stream contest, because Ray is giving away a ton of stuff, and you're going to want to get in on that. Tune in for the draft stream, sign up on Underdog, and enter the contest using promo code DDD. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to all of the content we put out on DD, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good week, and I'm out. Peace.